So for any of you that know me, you'll know that Moneyball, don't know what year the film came out. It's got Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill. Moneyball, that film, is one of my favorite films of all time. Perhaps my favorite because it relates very strongly, believe it or not, to the video game business. And it has been a guiding principle to how we do business. Very much so, actually. On a side note, I actually have a bit of a personal connection to that film because a singer that I used to manage, her father was in Oakland A. So yeah, a little bit of name dropping there, but let's stay on topic. So Moneyball, if you haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil it for you because I actually think it's a really great film. But basically, it's about Billy Bean, who is a real person who was the GM, general manager, for a baseball team called the Oakland A's. They'd had, if I'm not wrong, they kind of nearly won I forgot what it's called in baseball, the World Series, but had lost at the end. And despite having a small budget, he wanted to change how things were. He wanted to win. He wanted to do better. And that's kind of very inspiring for anyone who owns a small business. And certainly in the video game world, if you're a solo dev or an indie dev and you're growing up these massive AAA studios, it can feel a bit like being the Oakland A's going up against the Yankees. Now, in that film, they talk about, what's his name? Bill James. And basically, he's this guy who invented a number system for assessing players, I think called Moneyball, hence the name of the film. And that's how he assesses players. And they found that by using these numbers, they were able to find players that were they were cheap, but were actually very good. And it focuses on one number called the OBP, the on-base percentage. And that's actually where this is going to start, about how it's related to the video game industry. When you publish your game on Steam, Valve gives you a whole bevy of numbers that you can play with and look at and metrics to measure how your game's doing. It's very tempting to spend a lot of time on the site checking out all these numbers and trying to assess what they're doing for you here and there. And if you've been watching a lot of these other kind of advice on how to get your indie game out on Steam and how to make it successful, then chances are you've watched videos where they talk about the wish list. And that's the first parallel I see between Moneyball and the video game industry, which is there is that one number, which is, I'd actually say, is wish lists. If you have a very, very healthy number of if your game's been added to a lot of wish lists prior to launch, no matter what, you're required to have 2 weeks before you launch anyway. But if you have a very healthy list, that's actually a good indication of how good your launch is going to be. And to do that, you need very good marketing. There's videos about that. I'm not going to go into that in this video. This one, I will admit, there are far better videos on marketing your game on Steam and getting your game on wish lists. So I do recommend you go on those instead. I've seen multiple videos where this is talked about, and some really solid advice is given there, particularly about game festivals. So I really recommend that. But that's one kind of parallel that I want to draw right off the bat, which is that in baseball, they've got those on-base percentage, and then here, it's the wish lists. And then moving on from that point, there's this one point they talk about through most of the film, which is, does he get on base? Does this player get on base? And that's the factor they use to decide how, whether they buy a player and the success in the games, whether they win. So basically, wins are bought by buying players that can get on base. Now, this is also related to video games. If, as great as your game is, if you can't get the game out, if it's not on base, if you never launch the game, it'll never really make you any money. I mean, yeah, you can make promises on Kickstarter and things like that and try to get some additional funds for it. And you might even succeed a bit at the beginning. But if you never launch, you have a whole bevy of other problems. But that's the main point. As long as you launch your game, it'll make some money. Now, even if the game's quite terrible and you're just launching a game to get some understanding of the business, someone will still buy it out of interest. Like, if you have achievements, somebody's going to buy it just for the sake of having those achievements. There's people who, and don't ask me how they have the money for this, will buy every game in existence for the sake of owning every game in existence. So no matter what, as long as you launch and Steam agrees that your game is a game, that's the other important thing, you will make some money. And this is why it's important not to get bogged down by things like feature creep and, unfortunately, writer's block, which definitely affects me. But then I have to remember that sometimes you have to slice things out of your game so that it can finally be made. And honestly, it might feel like you're lessening the quality, but if you only thought about it now, it might be a feature that doesn't really make a difference, or might be something that the player will only see at the end, in which case it'll only be the people who finish your game or the people who even start your game who see it. So I'm not saying make worse games, of course not. The inherent quality, the primary gameplay loop should be solid. It should be a fun, well-crafted game, but just don't fall into the temptation of adding too much, because as I've mentioned in other videos, power creep or feature creep, feature creep is very dangerous because everything multiplies in games. It's not like a film or a painting where you can add something at the end. Adding something to a video game can invite a host of bugs and other such problems that would cost you a lot of money. Like, if you're doing this full time and you end up burning half a week or a week fixing a bug that you put in near the end, that's a week's worth of salary and a bunch of game sales that go into that mistake. It's something else I'd like to talk about in the future, which is about like the price of mistakes and why you shouldn't really work when you're very tired, because you can put in bugs and then you have to fix those bugs, and sometimes that costs you a lot of time, which is money. But basically, getting your game out is just so important, and that's the first kind of lesson from Moneyball that I think you should take away, which is that, do you get on base? Is your game out? Because when it's out, it can actually make money. It won't make a penny, except for Kickstarter, but that's something else. It won't make any money until it's published. Another line I really like, and again, I'm not going to say this is the only film that has that line, but basically they have that line in reference to how the Oakland A's are changing with the times within the film, is adapt to die. Now, this is so true about video games. Yes, sometimes video games take multiple years to make, and if you're doing it part-time rather than full-time, chances are that, you can only put in a couple hours a day, if you're lucky, maybe just a couple hours a week. So your production time is going to span from half a year to a year, and adapting is not going to be easy. But if you can adapt, it can actually do very well for you. Like I mentioned earlier on, Steam Fests are awesome, so if you can adapt your game to be able to enter a Steam Fest, that'll be great. And the other thing is adapt with the times and see what's popular and what isn't. I've seen a few examples of games that have a great concept but stay in early access, and then another team gets the concept, makes a better game and builds it faster, and then wins the race. And they end up winning because of adaptability and speed. It's something that they advise in business school, it's something they advise in military school as well. And there's a reason why. Adaptability and speed, it's a solid strategy. A business that can turn around and heed to its customers' demands quickly will be a business that stays in business for a long time because the clientele will come back. Same in military operations. You hear famous battles where somebody who may not have had the bigger army or the stronger army, but outmaneuvers the other army and is able to adapt and move faster and read the situation better, wins. I'm not going to name exact examples because I'm not sure whether the army was bigger, but examples of where outmaneuvering and speed won the day was like Napoleon in Austerlitz and Caesar in somewhere in Spain. I won't say Lerida, but I'm not sure. But anyway, the point is that adapt or die is so true. You have to constantly be able to adapt to the business and the things that change within the industry so that your business can survive. And this means constantly checking out new technologies, having staff that can also adapt quickly, and being able to hire new people to be able to make the games that you need in order to survive. Yeah, so those are the 3 points. I guess I should have counted the on-base percentage as the first point, but basically those are the 3 sort of takeaways from Moneyball, which I think definitely apply to the video game industry. I know this one was a bit of a shaky one. I might give it another go, but I might not, because I was explaining the film. I didn't practice that bit, but I practiced the bit about talking about how it applies to the video game industry. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more. Thank you.